it's actually quite close. I'm going to jam this. I think we might even jam this. Even could limp this. Oh, you know what? I'm going to try it. Let's bring out a limp. We haven't done that for a while. Or ever on stream. Limping is something I've been experimenting with on the buttons. I haven't done it on Twitch at all. Mainly because I don't want to give away any hands. But here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a limp hand that we're playing. You're first on Twitch, you get to see. Won't talk about range at all, because that's not relevant. Now this king is a terrifying king. Very scary prospect. How on earth do you try and decipher a check back range which contains loads more air? Now, because it's got loads more air, it's got a load more 7 and 10 with a club combos, Jack X with a club combos. So you have Jack 3 with the Jack of clubs there, as well as 7-3 with the 7 of clubs there, etc. So I think it makes sense to bet this hand more than in a raise pot, where those hands aren't there. And in a raise pot, you just have to do whatever. We get donked into here. It's whatever. I mean, we're just going to call. Like, there's definitely Queen 10, Queen 7, every Queen it's a clubs, I suppose. But that's difficult on the flop. But I'm not folding. Queen 7, yeah, makes more sense. There's definitely bluffs possible. So you could definitely take a hand, for example, like an 8x of clubs, for example, a 9x of clubs, never folding turn. Possibly not folding flop with a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. It's definitely possible. And that makes perfect sense to bluff those on the river. The block donk with the queen is whatever. Like, if I have 2 pair, it's fine. It's a limp pot, so like everyone's a bit guesstimating. Dominate again, as we do. I will say my button win rate has been a lot higher since the last 2 months I've been experimenting with button limps, and it's a lot more post flop. And I know I've not done it on Twitch at all. But you know, here's a hand. Here's a hand. A course says of course you've used my name. But it's okay. I smile every time. I'm all about the repeated jokes and dad jokes. That's good. That's good to know. Dakagzm. I got dizzy when Tom limp button. My head legit spun 360 degrees, just like in The Exorcist. It's still an experiment, I'll be honest. I'm sort of running an experiment for the entire 651 stable as to just how high my win rate is and how much are we giving up, etc, etc. There is marginal limping with quite a few hands in pure GTO strategies. In a lot of the solvers these days, they just don't bother doing it because it just takes a ton of effort to try and no-lock it. And so I think most people don't actually have a reference point of how to respond to it, which means that most people will make some sort of broad assumptions of that. And it's definitely an area where if you've been experimenting with button limping, you'll have a bit more experience in terms of the post-flop kind of ranges that you're typically up against. And I don't want to give away too much, but obviously we talked before about directing, especially if the guys are playing lots of tables, directing them into areas where the game tree is a lot less clear. And I do think it's something where that's quite nice to be able to do that. Alright, so a good turn, maybe. Still jacks and kings possibly in the range. We faced a min bet and a check, which, yeah, it's whatever. It feels kind of fine. Going to go for 45 chips. Because it's right in between the two sizings that the solve would use, and I want to use the murky size where possible. You can no longer deal wizard. Yeah, you can also like no lock. So you can. There's two things you want to think about button limping: is the response versus limp from the small blind and the big blind, and of course post flop. And so post flop and pre flop, there will be certain moves made that I think I won't say what obviously, but they'll think there are certain moves made that the population typically doesn't do. You used to see it a lot more. It used to be quite a popular, I think, strategy. It has other benefits too, and again, it allows, I think, a much more it gives you a lot more flexibility. So let's say you have certain reads on an opponent in min-race pots, and this is, I think, something really hard to get your head around. Thank you, love. Coquenito. Bienvenido y muchas gracias. Let's say you play an opponent. Now, this isn't true. I'm just going to say, it could be true, but whatever. I'll just say a random example. We're in the button, and we think our opponent plays very passively in button spots min-raised. Yeah, we shot him. If that's true, they just check a way over check fold, in our opinion, in big blind versus button spots. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying hypothetically. What you can do in those situations, if they're massively overfolding pre-flop, for example, or massively overfolding C-bets, you can weaken your button range by limping strong hands there, which will encourage the small blind along with those strong hands. And the guy that's overfolding, happy days anyway. We're going to call it two opponents, slightly edge, happy days. Now, let's say the opposite true. Let's say the guy's really aggressive against your min raises, and they attack them with loads of 3-bets, and they check raise loads, and they face loads of barrels. You can limp some weaker hands there, and then suddenly your min raise range is now super strong, and you can what it allows is a lot more maneuverability with your ranges, which I think a min raise only strategy doesn't give you that flexibility. You can shove hands a bit, but you don't get that sort of lovely flexibility, because when you have button limps, it's not just your limping range that's affected, it's your min raising range that's affected too. And how you choose to structure the relationship between those two ranges has massive implications in both limp spots, which no one knows what you're limping because no one's got a HUD here. And so you just have to be aware of like what kind of ranges you turn up with. But also in min-raise pots, which is so hard to get your head around. You're playing 12 tables and someone's limping a bunch of buttons, you're like, okay, you just ignore it kind of thing. But then think about, well, how should that impact my min-raising strategy? The answer is you haven't got the capability. Just like whatever, I just play GTO against the min-raising range, but the min-raising range can be completely different. So I really like it in terms of that flexibility. Whether it's worth it long term, we'll find out. But there's lots of exciting theory that is behind it, and obviously I've done a lot of study into those situations, and so we'll see. Texas Tom are trying to bring back the button limp 2022. Let's see if it works. We could try. What do we limp? King 9 suited. Should we give it a go? For the fans, huh? Limp a marginal hand, limp a strong hand. Unbalanced, guys. You can't adjust. Now, the 8-7-2. Definitely a board that favours him. Definitely way more two pairs. 7-2, 8-2, 7-8. All in that range. What's an open range? I don't know. We're going to bet this hand, though, of course. Give it the half pot. It will, unfortunately, just be a kind of get it in, and if he's got two pairs, whatever. Kind of stack off thresholds get kind of different here, by the way. So, like, you have to be kind of cautious where the SPR is so small. We're used to just stacking off overpairs all the time, but suddenly we're 7-1 against an uncapped range. You have to be a little bit. I mean, I think there wouldn't be a problem, but it's definitely interesting. All right. Am I missing anything? Tufton, my dad Monkey said, if you see a button limper, mark him green. That's an option. Definitely. On I think weirdly enough on stars it would be less effective because there's a HUD and everyone goes like, oh, look at the limp. Just gonna call the jacks. Let's see jack on the turn. It'd be lovely. That's not the turn we wanted. I think we could possibly fold. We'd just check back. Still two pair in his range. Oh no. 7x is kind of unusual. What 7x has he got, ladies and gentlemen? 7-5, 7-3, 7-6? Seven six is possible. Would he donk with 7-5? I don't think so. 7-6, 12 combos. Would he bluff everything else? I think he would. Okay. Tough one to work out. You just have to think combinatorically wise. So like 7-6 is really the value combo you can have there of the 7x. And so because I think other 7x will just keep barreling turn. It's such a nice spot, right? To just bluff turn. You might not bluff no equity as he didn't, but like I think you definitely have 7x you think, well, that's good enough to bluff with. And then you think, well, 7-5 doesn't make too much sense to donk with, like middle pair, what's the kind of goal? 7-3, again, don't really make too much sense. 7-6 would make sense, 7-6 would make sense to check as well, and so 7-6 you think, well, there's 12 combos of them out there. We have to be right. 8 to win a pot of 2 isn't great odds, but I do think there's going to be over, it's 8-2, and I think there's going to be over, well over 100 bluff combos, I think. Because I personally would just take everything there, thinking that whatever. And we saw a bluff, so I mean, like, we don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense at least. Last game pre-break, GG to Slayer and 300 Chef. Take the 10s. Hey, got a win.